Since it looks like you guys really enjoyed the SOG versus the Switchblade and the ICR versus the SWAT videos, I decided to actually go a little bit further and do another weapon comparison, and specifically related to the suppressor. So in today's video, we're actually going to be comparing the suppressed KN versus the suppressed VAPR. We're going to be comparing the best class setup head to head and see which weapon actually has the best class setup while using a suppressor. So throughout the video, we're going to be comparing the weapon stats head to head. We're going to take a look at the different attachments, and we're going to see how they stack up against each other after you've put together the best class setup possible. If you want more of this content, make sure you leave a comment down below, leaving another suggestion of a weapon I should compare with another. And a quick reminder, if you do enjoy the video in any way, please remember to hit the like button before you click away. And if you are brand new to the channel, or you just like to find your way back to the channel and haven't yet subscribed, go ahead and make sure you do subscribe and put notifications on so you'll be able to stay up to date with my future content. So the first I'm going to take a look at is the base weapons for the KN and the VAPR. And when you put them head to head, you can see that they're tied up on the magazine size, very close on the reload speed, but the VAPR wins out slightly. And then as far as shots to kill, the KN has a slight advantage because there is a 4-shot kill range. And we go ahead and take a look at that rate of fire. You can see that the VAPR wins this category by about 100 rounds per minute. And then in terms of time to kill, you can see they're fairly even because of the faster rate of fire and the better shots to kill. They kind of even each other out, and that's kind of an even push right there. So now that we've looked at those, let's go ahead and take a look at the various attachments each weapon offers. So for the KN, you can see we got a hybrid mags, quick draw, laser sight, grip, stock, extended mags, rapid fire, suppressor. And then the VAPR side, we have a suppressor, long barrel, stock, fast mags, rapid fire, along with high caliber and stock too. So now let's go ahead and talk about the attachments I don't really think are worth using when you're setting up a best class setup for either the KN or the VAPR. So for the KN, I went ahead and crossed off the laser sight. Even though that one's a little bit borderline, you could take it, you could leave it, but when you're comparing it to the other attachments, I don't really think it's very valuable. In terms of recoil, this weapon doesn't have a ton of recoil, so I think grip is a little bit unnecessary. Technically, the VAPR has a little bit more recoil, so maybe they should have had a grip on that weapon, but then maybe it would have been a little too accurate, a little too overpowered, and maybe that's why they didn't include grip with those set of attachments. So when we look at the various attachments for the VAPR, we can see that I'm crossing off stock 2. And the main reason for that is because you get a huge jump in mobility as far as strafing speed when you use regular stock. When you equip stock 2, the actual difference is negligible. And after the VAPR had a huge range buff, I think long barrel could potentially be dropped off. Depending on what map you're playing, it's not really necessary, but it is a good option in case you want just a little bit more range, especially if you're going to be using the suppressor. So I know that I'm keeping a few stats off as far as ADS time, sprint out time, as far as strafing speed, but a lot of these kind of even out after we equip all these best attachments. The only exception with the KN is that you can equip quick draw, which will bring your ADS speed down to about 250 milliseconds, which is about 50 milliseconds faster than the VAPR. But at the end of the day, that's something you can pretty much overcome if you know how to use gung-ho correctly. So now I've gotten a few of those things out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the best class setup for each of these weapons. First up, the KM57 with hybrid mags, rapid fire, stock, suppressor, gung-ho, and dead silence. And obviously, if you're not going to be running crash, which is a majority of people, you can also go ahead and drop dead silence for scavenger. And obviously that's going to go ahead and transition us into the best VAPR class setup that includes a suppressor as well. And the best VAPR class setup with the suppressor is going to be rapid fire, obviously a suppressor, high caliber, and stock. And as far as perks go, you're pretty much going to do the exact same thing that I talked about with the KN57 best class setup. Now let's go ahead and reevaluate those stats I talked about previously with no attachments, now with the best class setup possible. So for the magazine, you could swap out hybrid mags for extended mags. Personally, I'm going to go with the hybrid mags just because I get that faster reload speed, which you can see it ends up beating out the VAPR in both of those categories. As far as shots to kill, they kind of even out once you get that high caliber attached. Rate of fire, they both bump up with that rapid fire, 588, 697. The difference is still about 100 rounds per minute. Then in terms of time to kill, you can see now there is a clear winner. And even though I'm saying clear winner, you still got to look at the various ranges, because maybe all those ranges stop at like 5 meters or whatever the case is for the VAPR. Then it's the clear loser. So let's go ahead and kind of look at those different various things. I know a lot of times people have their opinions on specific weapons and they don't really look at the data to see how good they are. As long as you know how to use the weapon correctly, you're using the right class setup for it, you can find out how dominant it is. And I think that's one of the best parts about doing a side-by-side comparison on specific weapons, is because you can get a definitive answer, or at least get something in the realm of a conclusion that yes, this weapon is better than this weapon in certain scenarios, and at least understand those scenarios. For example, when I did the SOG versus the Switchblade, most people had their heart set on that the SOG was a much better weapon. When you actually start looking at the stats, the really only big difference is that recoil the Switchblade has. If you can manage recoil, you're going to outgun the SOG in pretty much almost every scenario. And the same thing again happened when I went with the SWAT and the ICR breakdown. I was trying to figure out which weapon was better. At the end of the day, the ICR is probably a lot more consistent, but with the right attachments, the SWAT can actually beat out an ICR in almost every scenario. And the other part that's interesting about these videos, a lot of times people go to my comment section and will say, "Nuh-uh, you're wrong. That weapon is way better. What are you talking about? It slaps compared to the other weapon." And I think those preferences start off based off how the particular individual's gun skill is. So what I mean by that is if you have a lower gun skill, it's harder for you to manage recoil. You're probably going to favor the weapon with less recoil. In this case, it's the KN57. I think it's a majority of people really enjoy the KN over the Vapor because it's harder for them to control the Vapor's recoil. Even though in my opinion, they both have very minimal recoil. It's not a big issue, especially when you're talking about weapons that have actual recoil. These weapons are much easier to control than those weapons. So now that I've gone through the basic weapon stats with and without the attachments, the best class setups for each of the weapons, and my own personal opinion on how people actually develop preferences based off a specific weapon, regardless of the weapon class, I think it's time to go ahead and show this visually because I think it's a lot easier to see. So earlier when I was talking about time to kill, I said the various ranges matter because obviously if you have the Vapor that has a faster time to kill, but it only kills fast up to 5 meters, probably not that effective. So we're gonna go ahead and look at these right here. You can see the different charts. You can kind of already start figuring it out. You're really good with these types of things. But if you're not, you can see the meters at the top. So 0 meters, 12.5, 25 meters, all the way up to 50 meters. Then everything beyond that is 50 plus meters. So the first thing we'll go ahead and talk about is the main difference between these two weapons and why the KN only has one line with distances and the Vapor has 3. And the main reason for the difference is because the Vapor has high caliber and the KN doesn't. So the KN cannot have a faster time to kill with any other attachment other than rapid fire, but I'm already factoring in rapid fire. You can see right here, you get 306 milliseconds at that first range, which is 4 shots to kill. Then 5 shots is 408. And then 6 shots is 510. And overall, that's what makes the KN so good is it has that 306 millisecond time to kill with 4 shots. And then that 5 shot range goes all the way up until about 37.5 meters with the suppressor equipped. But when we look at that first line of the Vapor, you can see that it doesn't have a 4 shot kill range. It only has a 5 and a 6. And then you got 344 milliseconds as well as 430 milliseconds for those respective ranges. So that first line for the Vapor actually represents 2 different things. One is the Vapor without that high caliber attachment, and then the Vapor with that high caliber attachment, but you're only landing body shots. So when we look at that second line, it's going to represent the Vapor with at least 1 headshot using that high caliber attachment. Between 0 and 12.5 meters, as long as you land 1 headshot, going to reduce the shots to kill from 5 down to 4 and the time to kill down to 258 milliseconds. So when you go ahead and take a look at the rest of that yellow line, you can see there's not much of an effect from headshots until you get to about 37.5 meters. And pretty much everything above that, you're going to have 1 less shot to kill, which will reduce that time to kill from 430 milliseconds down to that 344 milliseconds. So basically you're making it so it's a 4 or 5 shot to kill weapon at pretty much every range. And if you looked at the third line, you can kind of already figure it out, but you get an insane time to kill if you land at least 1 headshot all the way up to 12.5 meters. 2 headshots between 12.5 up to 37.5, you're going to reduce that time to kill. And then everything above that, you only need to land 1 headshot. You can see how that lays out. 258 milliseconds up to 37.5 meters, and that is with the suppressor. You decide to put on long barrel, you can actually get this range even further, and you can actually make this a 4 shot to kill weapon at pretty much every single range. So even though in my opinion, based off these 2 weapons, the data is pretty definitive, the Vapor reigns supreme with or without a suppressor. It's going to be a better weapon because you can have high caliber. The difference in opinion is really going to come down to that recoil management. Can you land at least 1 headshot? If you can't, the KN will probably still be a better weapon at most ranges because it's very low recoil. And if you have a problem with recoil management, you could just equip a grip, which in my opinion is kind of a waste for that. But everyone's opinion is going to be slightly different on that. But when it comes to pure data, the Vapor is a killing machine. Obviously, you're going to have a little bit of difficulty with the ammo, so maybe you equip fast mag so you can reload faster. It really just comes down to your playstyle and your preferences, but in terms of time to kill, not many weapons are melting faster than 258 milliseconds. So I do appreciate you guys all that made it to this point in the video. I know I went through a lot of information and people can get kind of drowned out by the numbers or whatever the case is. But for those of you that stuck around, I do really appreciate that support. Please remember to hit that like button. If you'd like to see more of these videos in the future, make sure you leave your suggestions for other weapon comparisons down in the comments section below. And then obviously, if you've made it to this point, you probably enjoyed the video. Please do me that quick favor of making sure you are subscribed with post notifications on by ringing that bell. I do appreciate all the support. Thank you guys for watching. As always, have a great day.